Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Rangers lose 2-1 to the Toronto Maple Leafs in overtime. And I was actually at this game. This is my first Toronto Maple Leafs game in Toronto. And it was fun. Really good game. Not the result that, I would have wanted for the Rangers, but glad to have gone. And it was honestly very much like a Ranger Leaf game in Toronto that we've seen in recent years, where 2-1 type games, close games. Seems like almost all the ones, especially in Toronto, end up in overtime. And the sad thing for the Rangers is, and they do get a point, like the result actually isn't horrible. I mean, Toronto is likely to be a playoff team. It's on the road. They get a point. Like that in itself is fine. It's just a lot of similar stuff to what we've seen lately, where goal scoring is a problem, despite the fact the Rangers are playing pretty good hockey. And Igor Shesterkin, played well. My problem lies with the top six. That's been my issue. It continues to be my problem. And the power play as well. But look, they lose the game in overtime, 3-on-3 situation where Panarin passes to Zibanejad. Zibanejad whiffs on the shot. They go the other way in an odd man rush. And, even on the way back, look, did Fox maybe not play it correctly? That might be true. But Panarin's back check is absolute bullshit. That's a situation where he could have easily prevented the pass going cleanly from Nylander to Matthews, which was the game-winning goal. And so the Rangers score a goal. They finally kind of break, not the home drought, obviously, but they had not scored since the third period at Pittsburgh. So it was coming up on close to, not quite, but close to 3 full games where the Rangers had not scored a goal until Juuso Parssinen scored. He, back in the lineup, scores at 4:51 of the third period. So, again, it's a lot of the same conversation where really, Mike Sullivan should be proud of what the team is. There's a lot of buy-in. Let's just put it that way. There is across the board, I would say. It's a different looking team. And I think that I understand why they want to, stick with the script and, not veer away from it, as they should. This is a recipe for success. However, when you lack the talent necessary for your top players, it's going to be hard to overcome this. That's my problem. Look, Anthony Stolarz was really good for Toronto, no doubt. He made a lot of good saves. There is a bit of unfortunate, I don't know, I don't want to use the word luck, but the Rangers really have played well against some pretty good opponents too. But at the end of the day, and look, it's, we'll get into the game, obviously, but just overall thoughts, it just being there and having the perspective of it. First off, JT Miller looks terrible. And I could see that watching on TV, but man, and look, I like some of his post-game press conferences. He's saying all the right things, and it's truthful. I don't think it's just bullshit. But at the end of the day, he doesn't look that great, and his style of play is such that even when he's not, he can basically, put himself positionally where he needs to. But again, look, not that JT Miller is a speedster by any means, but he does look slow, and he just looks off in terms of accepting a pass, making a pass, any bit of not even less than skill plays. It's just not there. So that's one thing. But at least with him, there is that north-south game. And there is little things that he will bring to the table. But again, as I've said previously, look, that JT Miller trade with the Canucks, that could be a disaster. That is on the table, and that could be a major problem. Next, Artemi Panarin. It's really, really frustrating. And there, more and more, it's it's hard to envision Artemi Panarin at this point for me. It's not impossible, It's not, but like, I don't think he'll be here come next season. And if it were me, I would try to trade him by the deadline. That would be me. Um, because realistically, what is this team ceiling this year? They could make the playoffs. They could. They could definitely crack one of the final spots, or maybe even a little bit better than that. I mean, Igor Shesterkin's looked really good so far this year. I like the style of play for them. And not to say that when Panarin's right, that it wouldn't be a loss if he was like trading Panarin could cost you a playoff spot. But I think you got to be forward thinking here. And I know that he'll start to, play better, but it's frustrating. It really, really is. I think that's part of it. And I just, his style of play, it's unique. There aren't many more talented players than him, but he's getting older. And it's tough. It is. And so he's one of the most frustrating ones. And with Mika Zibanejad, another one, obviously whiffs on that pass. As much as I've praised what he's done, with that also comes almost like expectations are so much lower. That's part of the problem with Zibanejad is that we don't really expect, you know, him to be the player he once was. So it's like, as much as I feel like he is playing hard, he's noticeable out there. When he may split that in overtime, a lot of that kind of goes away, right? Like it's one thing if you're not producing, but you're not being a negative. That was a horrible, like that can't happen. And we've seen Zibanejad in recent, seasons, where he does whiff, or it's a fail one time, or things just aren't quite crisp. And it goes back to my thing as well. Like it happened to be Panarin as Zibanejad, but look, the fact is that's not a duo that really works all that well together. It isn't. And that's where the Trocheck injury hurts because I really want Zibanejad on JT Miller's wing. That's where he's been most effective. But because Trocheck's out and you don't really feel comfortable, and I get it, you don't feel comfortable having Laba, move up into the top six. You're going to leave the Carrick line alone. It puts Zibanejad back at center. And I think that it hurts a bit. Now, in this game, Mike Sullivan, after I believe it was the first period, if memory serves, it was either after the first or second. I think it was after the first. They made a switch, Lafreniere for Cooley. So what it became was Cooley with Zibanejad and Panarin, and then it was JT Miller centering Lafreniere and Sherry. And that's where, like, again, like Lafreniere is a frustration, where you just want to see more. And he looks very ordinary at times. Look, he got a lot of chances, like him and Will Cooley, right? So I don't want to totally just badger them because I know that there were like legitimate opportunities, Will Cooley especially. But also I feel like Will Cooley's game has not been amazing. But with that said, could Will Cooley be playing maybe higher in the lineup than is ideal? As much as he was good last year, and I think we all believe that he can be a good player, look, he might not quite be a bona fide, no doubt about it, top six player right now, right? He might qualify more as a top 9 piece who you can kind of move up and down, but he's got a big role. He does. And again, I like his style of play too, but they felt like let's have more of a power, move it to the net type of guy with Zibanejad and Panarin. I get it. What they start out with next game, your guess is as good as mine. Right? I don't know that they're necessarily going to go back to that, but it's not going to be wholesale changes, so they might stick with it. Again, like that is what frustrates me. I really want this top 6 to be rejiggered somehow. I don't know how, but and again, the power play, they go 0 for 3. And I know that there were opportunities there. I get it, but the frustrations lie with those top players. Plain and simple. It's not hard to understand. And the results aren't there. Again, the process is pretty good for the team. And they're really, really doing such a better job. Look, they didn't give up a 5-on-5 goal in this game. They technically won the 5-on-5 battle, 1-0. And that does speak to something that is important. But again, I'm just going to go back to, I think it's a bit of a problem as far as the lack of talent. Like, yes, things will bounce a little bit better for them. It doesn't change the fact that you look at other teams and their core is better than the Rangers core. It's a sad reality, but it is what it is. So let's discuss this. Let's get a little bit deeper into the weeds in this game. Um, as far as the lineup was concerned, one switch, Parssinen for Brodzinski, which makes sense, and especially with Parssinen scoring, expect that to stay the same next game when they go to Montreal. But on defense, there was a chance that maybe Scott Morrow would somehow make his debut. They call him up basically with Will Borgen being banged up. But Will Borgen plays. Will Borgen played, I believe, a full complement of minutes for Will Borgen. Let me just confirm that. You know, um, maybe a little bit less, but nothing. I mean, nothing crazy. I don't think that the injury impacted the amount he played, maybe slightly, if anything. But good to go. Will Borgen had he has one of the longest consecutive game streaks. Like as far as current Rangers, the only one that had more than Vincent Trocheck until he got hurt was actually Will Borgen. So it's going to take a lot to take him out of the lineup. He was in there, and so no Scott Morrow making his Ranger debut, but he is on the roster as a healthy scratch, as well as Connor Mackey and Johnny Brodzinski. Now, with that, in order for the Rangers to call up Morrow, Vincent Trocheck is now on LTIR, which doesn't necessarily change the timeline. He was week to week. So, it just is a little bit more honesty with that because, it's got to be 10 games or 24 days, I think is the thing there. So don't expect to see Vincent Trocheck back until earliest, like a couple weeks from now, early November. And it could be longer than that. Again, Vincent Trocheck, if he is to miss time, it's something fairly serious. So it's significant, but at the same time, the week to week projection, kind of basically still stands. Now, if it becomes a situation where all of a sudden November comes and goes and like Trocheck's not playing, then that it's that it was more of a month to month thing. But that I think was basically to get Morrow on the roster, and they could only do that by putting Trocheck on LTIR. So Rangers Leafs, of course, got my whole, again, first game at Toronto. Got a point, I guess. Was trying to give the Rangers some good luck. They got a goal, so that's an improvement over the last couple games. But a lot of power plays in that first period. Only one after that, but the first was a lot of special teams. So, a little bit of choppy. Like, honestly, it was a bit of a slow start. Like, the pace wasn't great. I felt like both teams were kind of feeling each other out. And then Artemi Panarin hooks Jake McCabe at 420. And that's the lazy bullshit, with Panarin. Look, we know his style of play. We know he's more of a finesse player. We know he's not going to get overly physical, but it's just when you're not going to produce, it's kind of hard to deal with. But the Rangers do kill it off. 7:22, Dakota Joshua, Russ Will Cooley. Rangers don't score on the power play. Look, like there were chances, but I still subscribe to the idea that I would switch it up. I really, really would. I mean, because the second units actually look pretty solid. They really have. Like they've had some of the best looks and power play goals, quite frankly. Like the Rangers only have, I think, a few this year, and at least one of them was from the second unit. At the 10-minute mark, Will Cooley hooks John Tavares. And with Cooley, look, his style of play is such that it would happen, but there's been a lot of penalties for Will Cooley this year so far. And this one does eventually bite the Rangers at the very end of it, which is tough. 12 seconds to go on the power play. It's a goal for Matthew Knies, the second goal of the season from Nylander and Ekman Larson. And JT Miller wins the faceoff clean. Gavrikov, he had more time, is what I'll say. I know Auston Matthews was near him, and Gavrikov did the right thing by going, around, rimming it along the boards. Like he positionally was the right thing, but I felt like he had a little bit more time there. And to, all you got to do is get it out of the zone, and that power play is effectively over. And JT Miller again wins it back clean. Gavrikov, I don't know, just it all seemed like it happened too soon. All of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, Gavrikov's shoot around the boards goes right to Ekman Larson, and then William Nylander eventually ends up with the puck, throws it towards the net. Will Borgen's in front, as well as Matthew Knies, and it goes in off of Knies. Now, to me, it almost seems like it pinballed off of Shesterkin, possibly Borgen, but that's why you put it towards the net. And too many times in this game, the Rangers' top players, power play and other situations as well, overpassing. More so earlier in the game, I would say. Like situations that were there for them, there was a little bit too much east-west action among the top six. But Matthew Nyes gets that goal there again. Goes off, I think, Igor and possibly Morgan. And that makes it 1-0 Maple Leafs right there. Then at 15:43, Rangers have their chance for their second power play. Nyes trips Panarin. So give Panarin credit for drawing that penalty. That's only fair. Takes one, but also draws one. But the Rangers don't score. It's being snake bitten, but it's also not getting it done. And the frustrating thing too is Toronto's power play actually hadn't been good either. You'd think that given the personnel it would be, it hasn't, but yet they got their big power play goal. So Rangers don't score off of the Nyes tripping penalty. And we lead the first period with the Rangers down 1-0. And look, thought it was a solid period for the Rangers. They didn't dominate by any means, but it was decent. Second period, again, they make that line change, Cooley for Lafreniere. And kind of a similar feel to the first period, where, Rangers were doing the right things defensively, not allowing too many chances for Toronto, and they end up with a power play. Connor Sherry is tripped by Simone Benoit, but not a good power play. And if memory serves, I feel like that power play was worse than the ones in the first period. That one, it felt like there was less opportunity. So the score remains 1-0 as we go to the third. Now, give the Rangers this credit, because I've spoken about this. And while it wasn't a late in the period comeback, hey, down by 1 in the third on the road, they do find a way to get a point. Which, that's the thing. The losses sting, but when there's a point attached to it, like, that can't be forgotten. It's easy to, right? Because this in some ways, like, it feels just about the same as it does like the other couple games, but there's a big difference. They do get a point. So from a results standpoint, while you want the win, you want the 2 points, not a bad thing getting the 1. And it's Juuso Parssinen scoring his first goal of the season from Braden Schneider at 4:51. So the Noah Laba line gets the goal. They were solid. Again, in essence, they're kind of your fourth line right now. They're not getting as much ice time as the Carrick line. And I don't disagree with that, but I also felt like that the Laba line tonight wasn't bad. Probably one of their better games. And Parssinen gets rewarded. Good shot by Braden Schneider, slap shot from the point. And Parssinen with getting positioning in front, deflects off his skating in. Now, earlier than, in that shift, Radish kind of gets involved in front and Stolarz loses his stick. So Stolarz never really got full set again. The Leafs were considering challenging it. They didn't. And they probably would have lost the challenge if they did, but just a good job again of mucking things up in front, making it difficult for the goalie. And that's a tip and goal. That's how you're gonna have to score your goals. And it ties it up at 1. Rangers had chances to win this game. There were like Matt Rempe ends up with a good opportunity with about 3 minutes left on a turnover by the Maple Leafs. Rangers felt like the stronger team in the third. And look, they outshot the Leafs 10-4 in the third. So that it kind of backs that up. But unable to score past Stolarz. And so we go to overtime, 1-1. Now, the first shift started out with JT Miller, who won the faceoff. So Rangers had possession, which is always important in 3-on-3. JT Miller with Lafreniere and Gavrikov was the initial 3. But again, in a situation between these two teams, look at the talent. Like, you don't like that matchup here. Now, you go to a shootout, that's totally different, right? Because Igor gets a little bit more involved in that situation. But not only that, based on track record, at least from a Rangers side, now who knows if it's still the same, but Panarin, Zibanejad, like, you have pretty good shootout people to choose from. So that would have been preferable if you could get there, but they don't. Rangers lose in overtime. 58 seconds in, Auston Matthews scores his 4th goal of the season from Nylander and Riley. And basically what happens is, and again, Miller, Lafreniere, and Gavrikov off, Panarin, Zibanejad, and Fox on. And it's a pass from Panarin to Zibanejad that he just whiffs on. How Zibanejad whiffs on it, I have no idea. But once that happened, you knew it was problems. Because then it becomes kind of a 3-on-1 and then basically a 2-on-1, where Adam Fox is the only guy back at the time. Fox tries his best, and I'm really not going to come down too hard on Adam Fox here. Like, could he played it better? Yeah. But he did enough to basically give Panarin a chance to maybe break this play up. But he just flew by. It was a total flyby by Panarin, where if he does just one or two things differently, at least deflects the puck, it changes the course of what that play was going to be. And so, again, Zibanejad can't whiff. That's embarrassing in that situation with, the game kind of on his stick. Now, I don't know if he would have scored. Probably not. But he was in a decent position. And the Leafs go the other way and score, and they win it 2-1 in overtime. So some frustrating games for the Rangers lately, despite really playing some solid hockey. They really are. You need JT Miller to turn things around. If he's hurt, again, it's not good at all, to the point where you question whether he should be playing, if that is the case. But, Artemi Panarin has no goals. I mean, it's Zibanejad is not producing the way you want him to. Not even close. Lafreniere, Cooley. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't feel good as far as what how this roster is constructed with them. Getting good, bottom six playing well. I like the overall defensive game. They're really closing in on the opponents and making it tough. They're not giving up that. I mean, Shesterkin's been good and he's had to make tough saves at times, but against some high-powered teams, the Rangers are really holding their own. But power play is not coming through, and you're just getting no goal scoring from your best players. And, that's a problem. So Rangers road trip continues. They'll go to Montreal. It's a big game. I know it's early in the season, but you don't want things to slip. Rangers 2-3-1. I mean, that's not good, but it's not like it's disastrous. But if you do lose some more games, you put yourself really far back, and you just never know. So Rangers, it's a quick 2-game road trip in Canada. First game against the Leafs, they lose it 2-1 in overtime, and now they'll head to Montreal for a Saturday night game against the Habs, which, look, Montreal's 4-1. And it seems like they're carrying over some momentum from last season. So will not be an easy game for the Rangers, but one that it's going to be big for them to find a way to get the 2 points. So, again, Rangers lose 2-1 to the Maple Leafs in overtime.